The dusty paintings and forgotten sculptures that customers brought to sell had replaced the priceless masterpieces she'd once cared for in the world's greatest museums. But Dr. Catherine Kate Morrison still examined every piece with the trained eye of someone who had spent decades authenticating works by Picasso, Monet, and Van Gogh. Kate, 68, sat in the third row of the Tonight Show studio, her art historian's gaze automatically analyzing the set design, lighting composition, and visual aesthetics, while her curator's hands moved in unconscious framing gestures on her lap. The small Second Chances Thrift 25-year service name tag on her cardigan caught the studio lights as she adjusted her vintage glasses with the careful precision of someone who had spent decades handling irreplaceable artifacts. To the hundreds of customers who had sold their possessions to Kate over 2.5 decades, she was just another knowledgeable thrift store employee who somehow always knew the true value of items and had an unusual ability to spot hidden treasures. What they didn't know was that their donated artwork was being evaluated by a woman who had curated exhibitions at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Louvre, and the British Museum. What Kate didn't know was that her story had been quietly circulating among art history professors after a former colleague had recognized her in a local news story about community heroes during COVID that featured her helping families sell belongings to pay rent. The photo had caught the attention of museum curators who remembered Dr. Catherine Morrison as one of the most brilliant and respected art historians of the 1980s and 1990s. Kate's story had begun with a passion for art that had driven her through the rigorous academic world of art history and museum studies. Born in Boston to parents who were both high school teachers, Kate had shown an early fascination with visual beauty and historical context, spending her childhood in museums and dreaming of becoming the person who decided which masterpieces the world would see. After graduating with a PhD in art history from Harvard in 1979, Kate had specialized in post-impressionist and modern art, drawn to the revolutionary periods when artists like Van Gogh, Cezanne, and Picasso had changed how humanity understood visual expression. Her dissertation on the evolution of color theory in late 19th century French painting had been so groundbreaking that the Louvre had recruited her directly from graduate school to join their curatorial staff. Over 20 years, Dr. Catherine Morrison had become one of the most respected curators in the international art world. She'd organized exhibitions that had drawn millions of visitors, authenticated paintings worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and written scholarly articles that had shaped how art historians understood major artistic movements. Her 1992 exhibition, Revolution in Color, the post-impressionist breakthrough, had been hailed as the most important art exhibition of the decade. But the art world had changed dramatically in the late 1990s. Museum funding had shifted toward blockbuster exhibitions that prioritized attendance over scholarship, and Kate's expertise in historical art had become less valuable than curators, who could mount crowd-pleasing shows featuring contemporary artists and interactive displays. When budget cuts hit major museums, experienced curators with traditional academic backgrounds had been the first to be eliminated in favor of younger, cheaper staff who understood digital marketing better than art history. The thrift store job had started as temporary work while Kate figured out how to continue her career in an art world that seemed to have moved beyond her expertise. But 25 years later, she'd discovered unexpected satisfaction in helping ordinary people understand the value and beauty of objects they'd inherited or collected over lifetimes. The Tonight Show tickets had been a surprise retirement gift from the thrift store's owner, who had watched Kate work with extraordinary knowledge and care for 25 years and wanted to honor the woman who had somehow turned a secondhand shop into an informal art education center for the community. It was a Monday night taping in May, and Jimmy was in good spirits after interviewing a contemporary artist about his new gallery show. During his commercial break interaction with the audience, his attention was drawn to Kate by her sophisticated aesthetic sense and the way she examined everything with obvious expertise in visual analysis. Ma'am, you have an incredible eye for detail and composition. Are you involved in the art world? Kate straightened with the practiced posture of someone who had spent decades giving scholarly presentations. I work at Second Chances Thrift Store, sir. Been there 25 years, helping people understand the value of items they want to sell or donate. A warm murmur went through the nearby audience members. Thrift store work was community service that helped families during difficult times, and 25 years of such dedication deserved recognition. 25 years in a thrift store, you must have seen some incredible treasures come through over the years. Kate's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm for discovery. Oh, yes, people have no idea what they own sometimes. Original paintings by local artists, antique furniture with extraordinary craftsmanship, pottery and sculptures that represent important cultural traditions. My job is helping them understand what they have. You talk about it like museum work, very sophisticated understanding of art and value. Well, every object tells a story about the people who created it and the culture it came from. Whether you're looking at a painting in the Louvre or a handmade quilt in a thrift store, the principles of visual analysis and historical context are the same. Jimmy noticed something in Kate's language, a scholarly sophistication that suggested serious academic training in art history. Kate, have you always worked in thrift stores? You seem to have formal training in art evaluation. Kate paused, as if deciding how much of her background to reveal. Actually, I used to work in museums before I started at the thrift store. Different scale, but similar work of helping people appreciate art and understand cultural significance. The mention of museum work caught the audience's attention, but something in Kate's careful phrasing suggested more than typical museum experience. To museums did you work for? Several major institutions over 20 years. The Metropolitan Museum in New York, the Louvre in Paris, the British Museum in London. I was a curator specialized in post-impressionist and modern art. The casual way she mentioned the world's most prestigious museums caused stunned silence in the studio. Curators at those institutions were among the most elite scholars in the art world. Jimmy's curiosity exploded. This wasn't just a career change story. This was someone who had gone from curating exhibitions at the world's greatest museums to working at a thrift store. Jimmy made a decision that would change everything. Kate, those are the most prestigious art museums in the world. Would you mind coming down here and telling us about your curatorial career? Kate looked uncertain. Oh, I don't think people want to hear about old art history stories. That world is very different from popular entertainment. Trust me, people definitely want to hear about that level of art expertise. Come on down. As Kate made her way to the stage with the measured steps of someone who had once walked through galleries containing priceless masterpieces, her bearing transformed completely. The confident presence of someone who had once stood before rooms full of art scholars and explained the historical significance of humanity's greatest artistic achievements. When she reached the stage, Jimmy guided her to a comfortable chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced, this is Dr. Catherine Morrison. For 25 years, she's been working at Second Chances Thrift Store, but before that, she spent 20 years as a curator at the world's most famous art museums. Kate, tell us about your curatorial career. Kate settled into the chair, and when she spoke about art history, her voice took on the authority and passion of someone who had dedicated her life to understanding and preserving human artistic expression. Museum curation is about more than just displaying beautiful objects. It's about telling stories that help people understand how art reflects human experience, how artists respond to their historical moment, how visual expression evolves across cultures and centuries. The audience was completely quiet, understanding they were hearing about one of the most prestigious academic specialties in the world. What kinds of exhibitions did you curate? Kate's eyes lit up with memories of her curatorial prime. My specialty was post-impressionist and modern art, the period when artists like Van Gogh, Cézanne, Picasso, and Matisse revolutionized how we think about color, form, and visual representation. I organized exhibitions that explored how these artists changed not just art, but how humanity sees the world. Which exhibition are you most proud of? Revolution in Color, the post-impressionist breakthrough at the Met in 1992, it brought together paintings from museums around the world to show how artists in the 1880s and 1890s broke away from traditional techniques to create entirely new approaches to visual expression. Jimmy reached behind his chair and pulled out a tablet loaded with art museum databases and exhibition catalogs. Kate, we did some research before tonight's show. He showed Kate archived exhibition reviews and scholarly articles. According to art history journals, Dr. Catherine Morrison's Revolution in Color exhibition was called the most important art exhibition of the decade and attracted over 2 million visitors. Kate looked stunned. You found reviews of my exhibitions? We did. Listen to this from the New York Times art critic. Dr. Morrison's curatorial vision and scholarly depth have created an exhibition that will change how art lovers understand the birth of modern art. This is museum curation at its finest. The studio fell completely silent. The audience was processing that they were meeting someone whose work had been seen by millions of people and shaped how the world understood great art. You were clearly successful as a curator. Why did you leave museum work? Kate's expression grew more reflective, touching on painful changes in the art world. The museum industry changed in the late 1990s. Funding shifted toward exhibitions that would draw large crowds quickly, rather than scholarly shows that required years of research. My expertise in art history became less valuable than curators who understood marketing and social media. So you started working at a thrift store? I needed income while I figured out how to continue in the art world. But 25 years later, I discovered something unexpected. Helping ordinary people understand the beauty and value in objects they've collected or inherited is just as meaningful as mounting exhibitions of masterpieces. Jimmy leaned forward. But you never stopped being an art historian, did you? Kate smiled for the first time since taking the stage. You can't unlearn how to see art and understand historical context. At the thrift store, I help families understand that their grandmother's pottery has cultural significance, that their inherited paintings might be valuable, that beauty exists in unexpected places. Jimmy continued reading from the tablet. Kate, we found something else. Several of your former museum colleagues have been trying to locate you to offer you consulting positions. My former colleagues want to find me. Listen to this from the current chief curator at the Met. Catherine Morrison's scholarship and curatorial expertise are legendary in our field. Her insights into post-impressionist art remain definitive. The museum world lost one of its greatest minds when budget pressures forced her departure. Jimmy stood and addressed the audience. Ladies and gentlemen, this woman spent 20 years curating exhibitions that millions of people saw at the world's greatest museums, then spent 25 years helping ordinary families understand the art and beauty in their own possessions. He turned back to Kate. The art world wants to honor you. The Smithsonian wants to feature your curatorial work in their museum history archives, and several major museums want to offer you consulting positions for their historical exhibitions. Kate's eyes filled with tears. They want to honor my curatorial work? I do. And Kate, there's something else. Your exhibitions and scholarly writing are still being used to teach art history students around the world. Jimmy had one more surprise. We have someone here who wanted to meet you. From backstage, Dr. James Peterson, current director of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, appeared carrying a large portfolio of exhibition catalogs. Dr. Peterson said, approaching with obvious respect, I've been studying your curatorial work since I was a graduate student. Your Revolution in Color exhibition changed how I understand the relationship between art and historical context. You're a legend in our field. Kate was openly crying now, overwhelmed by recognition from the art world she'd thought had forgotten her. You know my curatorial work? Every serious art historian does. Your scholarship is still cited in academic papers, your exhibition techniques are still taught in museum studies programs, and your insights into post-impressionist art remain the standard that other curators strive to achieve. Jimmy sat back down beside Kate. Kate, you spent 25 years thinking your art career was over, but what you really did was continue educating people about art and beauty while your scholarly work continued influencing how the world understands great art. As they helped Kate back to her seat, she stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you for honoring my work, but I want people to know art isn't just for museums or wealthy collectors. Beauty exists everywhere in objects passed down through families, in handmade items created with love, in the visual choices people make every day. Everyone deserves to understand and appreciate art. The episode that aired became one of the most inspiring Tonight Show segments ever, sparking conversations about the value of art education and the scholars working outside traditional academic institutions. Kate's story inspired several major museums to create programs specifically for experienced curators who had been displaced by industry changes, recognizing that scholarly expertise couldn't be replaced by marketing skills. The Catherine Morrison Art Education Fund was established to support community-based art education programs. Kate accepted several consulting positions and spent her retirement helping museums reconnect with their educational missions while continuing to work at the thrift store part-time. Discovering that leaving formal museum work hadn't ended her curatorial career, it had expanded her impact to help everyone understand the art that surrounds them. At 70, Kate still examines every object with a curator's trained eye, still believes that art education should be accessible to everyone, regardless of economic status, and still carries her PhD diploma alongside her thrift store name tag, a reminder that true educators never stop teaching. They just find new classrooms where their knowledge can serve people who need it most. Is because sometimes the most important exhibitions happen not in marble halls with admission fees, but in humble spaces where a former curator helps families discover that they've been surrounded by beauty and history all along, one carefully evaluated treasure at a time.